Well, it doesn't look like anybody's in here just yet. If anybody's lurking, you can let me know if you can hear me or not. I'm going to give this a few minutes to see if anybody drops by. Um, uh, Nobody yet, but I don't want to start rambling without at least one or two people in here because I'd basically be talking to myself. So I'm gonna wait and see if anybody comes in. Like I said, if anybody has trouble hearing me or anything, just please let me know, and I will see if I can make adjustments. There's my dog. One of my dogs. Brandon's coming in here to peek in here and see what's going on. If anybody is lurking, excuse me just one second. Okay, doesn't look like anybody's in here yet. Well, this might be a flop tonight if I don't have anybody show up that wants to listen to me talk about Canadian slashers. You can see Reggie, one of my other dogs, back there. Looks like I might have at least one person in here. Hello, creep peeps. Um, if this is somebody that I should know that comes into the chat and I don't recognize your screen name or anything, um, just I apologize in advance. So some of the people that come in the chat might be people that I know through other avenues, but um, just forgive me if I don't know everybody's screen name. Creep peeps, we're gonna see if maybe a couple more people come in before I get started. I don't know if you knew what I was going to be discussing tonight. If you saw the link, you probably do. But I was going to be talking about a few Canadian slashers tonight. We'll go ahead and get started in a couple of minutes if nobody else shows up. And I guess if they show up later, they'll just have to get caught up. But I don't want to keep anybody else that might either pop up in the chat, or that might just be lurking and seeing what's going on. I don't want to keep those people waiting for very long. Oh, Piper. Piper, are you at your dad's right now? Also, I didn't realize you liked Canadian slashers, so that's interesting. I knew you liked horror movies, but just not Canadian slashers in particular. Um, Piper, does your dad know that you're in here hanging out with one of his crazy friends? Okay, let me check something really quickly here. Yeah, it doesn't look like anybody else is in here. Okay. Well, you love anything. Okay, cool. Um, so if hey Piper, if you can get your dad and Savannah to join in, I'd love to have them in here too if they're not busy. But if they're busy, that's cool. Um, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get started, Piper, so you don't have to wait all night for me to start talking about something. Maybe some other people will join us a little later. I may have to get up periodically to let my dogs out and stuff. So, with having 4 dogs, that keeps me kind of busy. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And I picked the topic of Canadian slashers because this was something that I was planning on doing a Seductive Poison episode on anyway, as well as a Blood Type magazine issue. Oh, cool, thanks. Um, but I haven't been able to do either, so I thought I would do an exclusive stream that is pretty much going to eventually be on the Patreon only thing for people to view later. As I said during my stream last night, I started a Patreon for Seductive Poison and Blood Type magazine. There are 3 different tiers, and the highest it goes up is $25. So, Piper, if you can get your dad to invest in Patreon for Seductive Poison and Blood Type magazine, there should be a lot of goodies on there soon. So, maybe you can try to bribe him into like giving you some money so you can join Patreon. Tell him you want to join Dana's Patreon. But anyway, we're gonna move right along to the first one that I wanted to talk about, which is Prom Night. Which this is a movie that when I was a kid, I was taken to a lot of drive-in movies as a kid. I remember Prom Night in particular. Steve and I have done a commentary on this. So if you can dig up that commentary, find it and listen to it, I tell this story as well. But anyway, when I was quite young, my mom and dad took me to several different drive-in movies. And I was so young that I don't remember all of it, or did not remember all of it at the time. I remembered the beginning of this movie, which was where the kids are walking to school and some of the other kids are playing in the hide and seek type game in an old convent. And the one little girl kind of stutters and she's kind of an outcast, so to speak, and the more popular kids don't like her, of course. But she wants to go play the hide and seek game with them in the old convent. So her twin brother says, "I'll go ahead. They don't want you in their game, but you can go ahead if you want. I'm not going to wait for you." So you think he leaves. So then she goes into the convent, gets caught up into she gets caught in the convent by these kids. And one of the kids doesn't really want anything bad to happen to her, but she screams, and he's afraid he's going to be found. And so he starts this thing. It's hide and seek, but they say, "Here, killers, here," and the people, the person that's it, and the people that they've already found are the killers, and they have to find everybody else. And so all the other kids come out, and they kind of start pushing the little girl and stuff like that, and she accidentally falls out of a window and dies. But that's the part I remember from when I was a kid. And so I kept hearing about prom night, prom night, prom night. And I was like, I really would like to be able to go back and see the movie again. And I found it in the video store, back in the video store days when everybody and their mother was going into video stores to get movies. I managed to find prom night for rent. And so I rented it. Took it home, watched. I think I watched it with my aunt, who was also really big into horror films, and she watched it with me. She'd seen it before, but she watched it with me again, and so that was a really cool experience. Finally getting to see the whole movie and actually being able to remember it, because I was no longer a small child at the time. So. This is basically your standard slasher fare, although I think the Canadians were doing it better at the time, because if you compare the Canadian slashers with the American slashers during that same time period, the early 80s, there was just something about the Canadian ones that was better, in my opinion, than the stuff that was coming out on the American side. So, I mean, you had things like Friday the 13th, which I'm still a big fan of, and all of that. And prior to that, like one of the granddaddies of them all, as far as slashers is concerned, John Carpenter's Halloween, but that was 1978. The slasher boom didn't really hit, in my opinion, until the 80s. So that was like a precursor to your Friday the 13th and your prom nights and all of that, and the slashers that came after that. There, of course, were a ton more Friday the 13th, and then you had stuff like, The Hills Have Eyes, which was the first one of those, was in the 70s, that are slasher-esque, in my opinion, as well. But this had your typical setup. I mean, most people know the setup to these early 80s slashers by now. Somebody's been wrong. Somebody's either been killed or made fun of, run insane, or whatever. Something's happened in their past and they've been wronged in some way, or a family's been wronged, or whatever. And usually it's a revenge scenario. So Robin, the little girl that's killed at the beginning of the movie, she evidently, I guess she was killed on prom night. So when all the kids grow up, including Jamie Lee Curtis, who I absolutely love. I love Jamie Lee Curtis and just about anything she's in. But when she started out, she was in a lot of these slasher films, and she did do some Canadian ones. I'm going to talk about another one here when we get done talking about this one that she was in that was Canadian as well. But Prom Night has always been one of my favorites because I don't know, is there something special about this movie? And I can't pin down exactly what it is. Maybe it's the way it's filmed, maybe it's the characters in it, I don't know. But basic plot, I'll get back to the plot here. The kids are all grown up and now it's time for their prom. And somebody is calling all the kids that accidentally killed the little girl at the beginning and telling them, oh, I'll see you at the prom and all this stuff. And, you know, they think it's just like obscene phone calls or whatever. They don't really think anything of it. But then when they actually do go to the prom, craziness happens, and the killer starts killing people, and he or she rather is wearing a mask, and so you don't really know who it is until the end. And I'm not going to tell you who it is because there may be some people that are either watching this or in the chat right now that have not seen the movie, and I don't want to give it away if you have not seen this movie. But for those of you that have seen it and know who the killer is, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So there are different ways that the killer is killing the people off at the prom. An axe is used, a knife is used, mostly a knife, but an axe is used in one kill. There's not a lot of blood in this movie. This is not an extra gory film, so please don't come into it thinking that it's going to be really super gory, because I consider it a slasher, but there's not a lot of blood flying around, and during the axe murder you don't really see it. You just hear the killer saying now, and a chopping sound, but you don't actually see the axe going into the body. So if you're looking for a gore film, this isn't it. But if you're looking for a decent slasher movie with a good cast and good atmosphere and all that, and a creepy vibe, I think Prom Night fits the bill. I did get, a few years ago, I did finally pick up the Blu-ray special edition of this. I was really excited when I found out Synapse Films was putting it out, because like I said, this has been one of my favorite movies for a long time. And also I heard rumblings here and there that the video quality of it was really good. So far, prior to this release, I'd only seen it on VHS and some low rent DVDs that were really dark. So what little blood there is in the movie, you really couldn't see it. But this blows all those other releases out of the water. Synapse did a really good job on this. The colors pop, like the reds and all that, they really pop. I really enjoyed the special features on this because they have audio commentary with the director Paul Lynch and screenwriter William Gray. They have a great featurette, The Horrors of Hamilton High, The Making of Prom Night, which I really enjoyed. Now, if you're hoping that Jamie Lee Curtis is on there, she is not on there, unfortunately. But a lot of the other people in the film are on there. A lot of the ones that were playing the high school kids in the film are in this featurette, and I love the stories they told. And the funny the funniest story they told was about Leslie Nielsen and his fart machine. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, listen to any featurette of a movie that Leslie Nielsen was in, and invariably somebody's going to talk about that fart machine that Leslie Nielsen carried around and made the fart noises all the time. So I'm guessing Leslie Nielsen was just as funny in person as he was on movies, but this was a serious role for him. He didn't do too many films that were like this, but he's great in it. I mean, for all the stuff that he did later that was so comedic, like the Naked Gun movies and the Police Squad show and all that he did, this is a totally different type of character. He's Jamie Lee Curtis's dad in the movie. He's the principal of the high school. So this is not a role that lends itself to a lot of comedy, a lot of slapstick comedy like that's in the Naked Gun films. And he doesn't, whereas he comes off as kind of like a buffoon in the Naked Gun movies, he's straight-laced and serious in this movie. But I thought it was refreshing to see him in something other than the comedy films, and he really pulls it off. He does an excellent job in this movie. There are also a collection of additional scenes that were added for the television broadcast. I believe NBC showed prom night in like 81 or so. I was thinking Steve told me that NBC put it out. Steve actually has a version, the TV version, and it was very interesting to watch it because generally what they do when they show a movie like Prom Night on television is they have to cut some stuff out for television's standards and practices. So they have to add scenes in there to kind of pad it out a little bit. So if you want to see scenes that were not in the original film, but just the television release, that's a great way to get to see those. Halloween was another movie that they did like that, and Halloween 2, its sequel, did that as well. So you've got a few extra scenes that kind of, they're not just for padding, in my opinion. They kind of add some depth to some of the characters. There's also never before seen outtakes. There's a motion still gallery, original radio spots. Okay. All of a sudden it says I'm back. Okay. Let's check this. Okay. I think I'm back. So, sorry for the little delay. I'm not sure what happened. I think something went kerplunk with my internet because my desk phone at work just lost service, and about the same time that I disconnected on here. So, I do apologize for that, but I think we're back. Now. Piper, are you still in here, hon? Because I think you're the only one in here with me right now. Boy, I'm really falling off the map here as far as keeping people entertained. But okay, I am going to move on unless somebody wants to discuss something about prom night. Piper, if you're still in here with me, you can You can talk about prom night if you want to. Steve's back here.
What
I got Piper in here.
What channel are you on?
What channel?
On YouTube.
My,
Is it Evil Dead chick?
yeah. Well, no, it's not that one. It's
Just Dana.
it probably shows up as Dana Benningfield.
Alright.
Why, are you going to watch my boring stream that nobody's on?
Yes. Maybe.
Oh, Lord. Okay. I don't know if Piper's still with me, so I'm going to move on to the next movie that I was going to discuss, which is Terror Train. It's another one with Jamie Lee Curtis. It's kind of like she did back-to-back Canadian slashers, because she did Prom Night and then she did this one. I'm thinking that's the order it was in. I'm pretty sure. And this is this movie is Jamie Lee Curtis's short hair phase. I mean, it wasn't extremely short, but it was like maybe almost down to her shoulders or whatever, and it pretty much was down to her shoulders on Prom Night. Yeah, I've heard it said that Terror Train is like if you took everything from Prom Night and put it on a train. I think Erwin Yablans has said that. That's what you get. It's Prom Night on a train. I don't know if I would go that far and agree that much with what he said, but it's a pretty decent film. Again, you have the killer is switching costumes because it's kind of like a costume party on a train for these college students. And it's actually I believe a graduation present for Jamie Lee Curtis's character from her boyfriend, because he wouldn't let her get, or she wouldn't let him get her anything, so he got her a trip on a train, and so they go on this train. All their friends go on this train, and they have a friend named Doc, which is her boyfriend's friend pretty much. She doesn't care for him because several years ago that Doc had played a prank with a dead body. He had pranked a guy that they didn't like very well, and they liked playing tricks on him and all that stuff. And the guy went crazy because of it. And Jamie Lee Curtis inadvertently was involved in it, and several other guys in the fraternity were involved in it. So again, it's another revenge type of thing, where the killer keeps taking the costumes of the people that he kills. So you never really know until an actual kill happens. Usually, when the killer's going to strike again. Because usually what he does is he kills somebody off, takes their costume, kills somebody else off, takes their costume. And, I just think the idea of having a killer on a train is interesting, because a train can't be easily stopped. So here they are stuck on this train with a killer with nowhere to go. I mean, you can't jump off the train unless you want to die. And also this takes place, it's a New Year's Eve movie pretty much, or a New Year's movie, because they do bring up the fact that it's New Year's Eve. I don't know what that noise was, but they bring up the fact at the beginning of the movie that it's New Year's Eve, they're celebrating. And so when they're on the train, I'm assuming it's New Year's Eve as well. It's also very cold, so when they do finally get the train stopped, when they realize something is wrong, the people all have to get out of the train and let the main guys, the conductor and stuff, search the train looking for the killer. But it's not that easy to find the killer because, like I said, he keeps changing his costume. And so you have a lot of red herrings in this movie, just like you do with Prom Night. There's a magician played by a real magician, uh, and the magician is David Copperfield. I don't know how, I don't know if Piper is still in here, but I don't know if she knows who David Copperfield is or not. But he is a real magician, and he was a magician in the movie, and he kind of has a little romantic interlude with Jamie Lee Curtis's character, and it kind of, I don't know. It doesn't really upset her boyfriend, but her boyfriend's friend, Doc, he's like, I hate magicians, I hate magic, and all that. Um, so, you're kind of tempted to think maybe David Copperfield's character is the killer because the guy that they played the trick on was into magic. Am I going to tell you if David Copperfield's the killer or not? No, I'm not, because again, there's probably people that have not seen this movie, and I don't want to give the killer away. This again is not. I don't remember this being particularly bloody. There's a fair amount of blood, but again, it's not gory or overly gory. There are some creepy scenes of, I keep hearing noises around here. There's some creepy scenes of the killer stalking Jamie Lee Curtis on the train and stalking other people on the train, and you're not really sure where the killer is at a lot of the times because they hide. And it's just, I thought it was really, for that time period, it was really a good take on the slasher genre. And it's got Jamie Lee Curtis on it and David Copperfield. So you can't beat that. So again, this one's another one that I highly recommend. I actually watch it with my New Year's Eve movies. This and New Year's Evil are two of the main ones that I watch every New Year's Eve to celebrate. So let's talk a little bit about the special features. There's not as many special features on this one as there are on Prom Night. This was a Scream Factory release, which is why I'm surprised that there weren't more special features. I mean, maybe they couldn't get anybody that wanted to do interviews or whatever, for whatever reason. But there's an interview with production executive Don Carmody, producer Daniel Grodnick, production designer Glenn Bidwell, and composer John Mills Cockle. There's a theatrical trailer, TV spot, and still gallery. Pretty lean in the special effects or special features department. So I was a little bit disappointed in that, but like I said, maybe they just couldn't get anybody that was interested in doing anything per se with the movie. And again, I don't think they're going to get Jamie Lee Curtis to talk about it because I don't think she disrespects these movies. I just don't think she's interested in talking about them. I think she's talked about them all she wants to, and she's kind of moved on from that. She was very nice when I met her and got her to sign my Prom Night mini poster. But I just don't think that Jamie Lee Curtis has ever been big into the horror films themselves. I mean, she was in a handful of them, but I don't think that's her favorite thing to talk about personally. So I didn't really expect them to have her on here on any of the special features or on Prom Night either. If she had been, that would have been awesome, but it was okay that she wasn't. And also, I wanted to talk a little bit about the actual transfer of this. I apologize to Scream Factory in advance before I tell this story because I think I was a little bit hard on it, on this release at first, because the first time I watched it, I thought, especially the night shots, which this takes place almost entirely, well, pretty much entirely at night. And I thought the first time I watched it that it was super grainy, and I was like, why would Screen Factory put out something that looks like this? But the more I watched it, I guess I became a little more softer towards it, kinder and gentler. Because when I looked at it a second time and even a third time, I didn't find the grain nearly as bad as the first Black Christmas Blu-ray release that was put out. That is really bad. Terror Train, not so much. So, Terror Train is worth the money. Little lean in the special features department, so don't be expecting a lot there. But good little Canadian slasher, worth your time and your money, in my opinion. Okay, does anybody in here that wants to discuss Terror Train, or have anything they would like to add about Terror Train? I think I'm the only one in here right now. It says there's been 7 playbacks. I'm not sure what that means. I guess I'm going to have to ask Steve what that means. I don't know if people are actually running it back through YouTube or what. But anyway, give it a minute, 30 seconds or so, and then we'll move on to the next one, because I don't want to keep everybody up really super late like I did last night. I think people tuned out on me last night because I went on a little too long. Okay, so unfortunately I think I'm talking to myself pretty much now, but I'm going to move on because I'm enjoying this. This is keeping my mind occupied and all that jazz and stuff. So moving right along to another early 80s Canadian slasher, which is Happy Birthday to Me. And I have a story about this one too. Steve would probably say, oh my gosh, she's got stories about everything. But I remember seeing this classic cover art at a local video store that I went to. Well, actually, it wasn't a video store. It was a grocery store. But anybody that remembers back when a lot of the grocery stores had videos to rent, this was really early on. But one video store I went into, or one grocery store I went into rather, I think it was Bueller's Buy-Low, and I don't know how many people other places had a Bueller's Buy-Low, but we did, close by, just over the bridge into Indiana. And that was where I first saw the VHS cover art for Happy Birthday to Me, and it had this image on it. Now, the image is not of anybody that's in the movie, but what happens to this person in this image is what happens to one of the characters in the movie. And it also says 6 of the most bizarre murders you will ever see. So that combined with the cover art, I had to rent it. I absolutely had to watch this movie. If it had 6 of the most bizarre murders I'd ever see, it's worth renting. So I rented it, took it home and watched it, and I really, really enjoyed it. It has a lot of actors from other Canadian movies and even some people that showed up in Meatballs. Matt Craven from Meatballs, who played Hardware for those of you that remember watching Meatballs. Also, Spaz from Meatballs shows up in this movie as well as what was his name in this movie? Alfred was his name in this movie, and he plays kind of a strange guy that kind of keeps to himself a lot, and so you think, oh well, maybe he could be the killer, or maybe not. Again, this is a movie that has a few red herrings, not as many as Prom Night and Terror Train, but some. This was also the time when people from television, like soap operas, were showing up in these horror movies. So I believe this girl played the character of Lauren from The Young and the Restless. She shows up in this as one of Jenny's friends. Jenny is the main character in Happy Birthday to Me, and she is played by Melissa Sue Anderson, who many people will remember from Little House on the Prairie. She played Mary Ingalls. And so I remember reading an article with Melissa Sue Anderson from about the time this movie came out. And she was really trying to break out of that. I guess she was trying to break out of the good girl role a little bit, because she had been on Little House on the Prairie for many years at the point that she was in Happy Birthday to Me. And I remember in the article she was saying that, you know, in a way she was getting tired of playing Mary Ingalls and watching all these bad things happen to her. It got to the point where if anything bad was going to happen on Little House on the Prairie, they were going to do it to Mary. So Mary ended up going blind in Little House on the Prairie, and her baby ended up dying, and just over and over and over. And she kind of, you know, I guess she was getting a complex. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I think she was kind of trying to move away from the family TV type stuff and try something a little riskier. Now, does Melissa Sue Anderson get naked in this movie? No. I mean, you see her getting ready to take her shirt off and stuff like that, but you don't see any breasts, you don't see side boobs, so guys, don't get excited. You're not going to, you know, see anything like that. I think the most you see is her back when she takes her shirt off. She's never facing the camera full on, so you don't see any of that. I don't think that's what she was going for. I think she just wanted a little bit more risky roles to play, kind of roles that she could sink her teeth into and flesh her character out a little bit more. And I think this was a really, really good role for her, because Melissa Sue Anderson has an innocent look, but there were some scenes in this movie where you could see her anger coming out and stuff like that. Anger at ATN, another character in the film, especially when he sneaks into her house and sneaks into her room and steals her panties, and then he shows her and says, "I had this close to my heart. I had to win the motorcycle race," or whatever. And he shows her panties, and she gets really, really mad over that. So there was a lot more depth in the character of Jenny than probably in over half the episodes of Little House on the Prairie where she played Mary Ingalls. Now, am I putting down Little House on the Prairie? No. My mom watched that for years. I've been known to watch some episodes of Little House on the Prairie in my time, and it's not a bad show. It's just, if you're looking for something a little bit different that has Melissa Sue Anderson in it, this would probably be something good for you to watch. Now, this story, I don't really think of it as a revenge slasher. something bad did happen to Jenny and her mother in the past, and she had a birthday party and nobody showed up, and her mother was really angry, and there's some other things at work here, like some people getting involved with, like a woman getting involved with someone that's not her husband, and having a baby by that person, and just a lot of I guess bad things going on within the film that culminated in an accident happening. So now, many years later, somebody is killing off her friend, or actually, we see them getting killed off by somebody with black gloves, which sort of reminded me of a lot of Jallos, especially Argento's Jallos, because there was usually a black glove killer in there. Now, Steve may disagree with me on that, but I just think some parts of this were like a Jallo. And then some parts were just like a straight ahead slasher. So again, we see the killing happen, but people within the movie, it's just like they disappear. We don't know where they are. And it's sort of like a Friday the 13th film in that you don't really know what has happened to the, or people in the film are not going to find out what happened to these missing people until the very end. And again, I'm not going to give it away for those of you that have not seen it. But it is, again, it's a really, really good slasher movie. They did do an HD restoration of this. Unfortunately, this is not a 4K. As far as I know, this has not been put out in 4K yet. Neither has Prom Night or Terror Train yet. Anyway. There is, and I really don't know why they put that on this release. This is an indicator release that I ended up getting. I also have a Blu-ray or a release that I'm going to go try to grab that so I can show you the difference between those. This is just a regular, or this is just a Blu-ray as well. But what I like about the packaging is this is one of those retro VHS packaging deals where it looks like there's a VHS tape in there, and it's got the stickers on it and all that. This is actually more akin to the cover art I saw on the VHS when I was a kid, when I ended up renting it. And it has we charge if tape is not rewound. People that used to rent a lot of movies probably remember that 50-cent rewind fee or whatever if you didn't rewind the tape, because who wants to get a tape after somebody else has watched it and you got to sit there and rewind it before you watch it. That's one good thing about Dish. You don't have to worry about that. But you probably remember those Be Kind rewind stickers and 50-cent fee if it's returned and not rewound. It also has a facsimile sticker that says horror on it. I don't know if you can see that real good, but it's there. But they put out a few of these. I'm guessing Mill Creek Entertainment. There might have been another company that did it, but this is purely for collectors. Your standard run-of-the-mill horror fan is probably not going to be interested in getting those, because you're not dealing with anything special other than what Mill Creek Entertainment put out. I mean, it's very plain. And actually, you will not get cover art that looks like this on the inside. See, this is a slip cover here. I actually cut down one of my other releases and put this insert in there just so I could have that cool artwork on there. So if you just bought it and didn't change out the artwork, then you won't see that. But anyway, back to the alternative score experience. I have no idea why anybody in their right mind would want to listen to that alternative score experience. Because for anybody that remembers, a few years back, Happy Birthday to Me was put out on or maybe it was DVD, and it might have been Blu-ray too later. But anyway, for whatever reason, they replaced all the creepy sounding music at the beginning with some kind of disco soundtrack, and it was horrible. I mean, the disco soundtrack just on a record would be okay, but it was horrible with this movie. And I don't know whose choice that was, why they had to do it, if they had to do it, and if they didn't have to do it, why the hell did they do it? I have no idea, because it was absolutely awful. And I'm not the only one that complained about it. There were several people that complained about that. So, needless to say, on this release, and I believe on this release as well, it has the original soundtrack that people were familiar with in watching this movie in the past. So, again, I don't know why they would have that on there. It even says controversial rescored electronic music soundtrack used in the 2004 home video re-release. Okay. There's audio commentary by the Hysteria Continues team, which, like I said last night about Hysteria Continues, they do an awesome podcast. They cover a lot of different movies. Well, generally horror movies, but they cover a lot of 80s slashers and stuff like that. So that was really entertaining. Let's see. There's an image gallery, on-set promotional material, original trailer and TV spots. If you need the subtitles, they're new and improved English subtitles. There's an exclusive 24-page booklet with extracts from the original press kit, which is interesting. Advertising promotion guide and selected film reviews. This actually, from Indicator, is the UK Blu-ray premiere, and it's a limited dual format edition of 5,000 copies. I don't know if I really care about that or not, but prior to seeing this version, the Indicator version, at least for me, was the one of choice to get, because, like I said, the 2004 release had that awful soundtrack, and so I don't see anybody really enjoying that at all. So yeah, so moving right along, unless anybody's in here that wants to discuss Happy Birthday to Me, I'm going to check and see if we've got anybody else in here. Perhaps not. Well, we've had 13 people play it back, but I guess they're not interested in chatting. So I'm just going to move right along. We've got about 3 more to cover. I may try to do this again at a later date. Maybe this was a little bit of short notice on my part. I do apologize. I've been working from home, and tonight was my late night, and I had to work until 7, and so I might have gotten more people if I'd done this a little bit earlier, which, you know, I might decide to do one tomorrow. I don't know. I'm supposed to have a new desk coming in. Not that you guys care, but I'm supposed to have a new desk coming in tomorrow, and I may be very busy putting that desk together, because The word is that it takes about 3 hours to put together, and that's with another person, so it may take me a lot longer if I put it together myself. Uh, so, anyway, moving right along to the next movie is one that probably a lot of people have heard about, the people in the horror circles. It's My Bloody Valentine. They did make a remake of this. It did come out in the theaters, and hey, Darren. I don't know if have you been lurking and or are you just coming in right now? I have not discussed curtains yet. Actually, I'm going to. Uh, I'm going to be talking about My Bloody Valentine in just a second, and then curtains, and then visiting hours. Um, so you came in at the right time, because I talked about Happy Birthday to Me, Prom Night, and Terror Train prior to that. So, okay, great. Well, you didn't miss too much, and like I said, if people want to go back and rewatch this, excuse me, it's gonna, it'll probably be on YouTube for a little bit, and then I'm gonna move it exclusively to Patreon. For those of you that either don't get to see it for the day or so that it's on YouTube until I just put it on Patreon, or the people that are in here and getting to hear me talk, you to be able to view this at a later date, you're probably going to have to join Patreon to be able to do that. Um, so. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, moving right along, I was just getting ready to play My Bloody talk about My Bloody Valentine. I was looking at the chat, and Darren just said I'll play the start back tomorrow. Okay. So, we're going to talk about My Bloody Valentine. Like I was getting ready to say, there was a remake done of this, which actually wasn't too bad, and I believe, yeah, it came out in 3D in the theaters. I unfortunately did not get to see it in 3D at the theaters. I wish I could have, but for whatever reason, I didn't get to go. But still, the original holds a special place in my heart, because this is the one I remember watching as a kid, or teenager rather. I really, my parents never really told me what kind of stuff I could watch and what I couldn't watch, and so a lot of stuff, I don't remember watching My Bloody Valentine on TV, and I don't remember watching Prom Night on TV, but things like Halloween 2 and stuff like that, I do remember watching it for those kind of things. Howling 2, Silver Bullet, Firestarter, a whole lot of the Stephen King stuff. Friday the 13th Part 3, things like that. Around Halloween time, we had a local channel back home, Channel 44. And what they would do is every Halloween, it was kind of like AMC does now, every Halloween season, they would show, pretty much the same set of movies, but it didn't matter to me. I would watch them because it was just so cool. They would generally show like Halloween 2, Halloween 3, Firestarter, Silver Bullet. I mean, it was basically the same ones every year, but like I said, I didn't care. I loved it. Um, Darren says, My Bloody Valentine's in his top 3 slashers of all time. I don't know if it'd be in my top 3, Darren, but it's up there on my list. I absolutely love this movie. This is another one that Steve and I did a commentary for. If you haven't listened to our commentary, if you can find it somewhere, definitely listen to it. I think we had a pretty good time watching it. Um, this one, again, is another kind of like, I guess it's kind of like a revenge type scenario as well. There is a miner in the past, they go back and talk about this. There was a miner in the past, Harry Warden, who got trapped in a mine because their two supervisors wanted to go to the Valentine's dance, and so they didn't stay to make sure all the guys were out of the mine before they left. Well, there was too much methane gas in the mine, and it exploded, and there was a cave in, and Harry Warden ended up being trapped there for, I don't know if it was weeks or whatever. But when they finally found him, of course, he had lost his mind, and he basically said, you know, don't ever hold another Valentine's Day dance, or I will come back and kill everybody. So they had one after, you know, after the whole Harry Warden thing. They had one again, and he came back and killed the two supervisors, and you know, so the town of Valentine Bluff said, no, you know, we're not gonna have any more Valentine's Day parties because we don't want this to keep happening. You know, because eventually Harry Warden ended up going to the state mental hospital, and you know, it's kind of like it could be considered a Halloween type scenario where, you know, when the killings start up again, is it Harry Warden again? Did he break out of the insane asylum? Because they spend so much time not really knowing if he was dead, if he had escaped, or he'd been released. You know, you just didn't know. And it was kind of like similar to Prom Night in that they thought one person was doing the killing, and it turned out to be a totally different person. You know, it's just, I like these movies that keep you going to the end. Now, unfortunately, nowadays I've seen so many of these that I can usually pick out who the killer is, because generally the killer is going to be the person you would least suspect, or at least in these early 80s slasher films, that was the case. So my mind is always, now when I watch a slasher, it always is like, okay, which one of these people would be the one that you would never dream that they were the killer? And 9 times out of 10, that's usually what it ends up being. Darren says, I always find the Prowler very, very similar to MBV. Reminds me of it. The Prowler not as good though. I would have to agree. The thing I liked, I guess, the thing I liked the most about the Prowler was not the acting ability of people or anything like that. It was Tom Savini's freaking special effects. That's what I liked about Prowler. It wasn't really the story, although the killer's costume and him having the bayonet and all that stuff was interesting. But I was really watching that movie because it showcased Tom Savini's great special effects work. But yeah, I would agree that the premise of the Prowler is similar to My Bloody Valentine in a lot of ways. Prom Night's similar to it. Terror Train's even kind of similar to it. A lot of these movies have the same type of vibe to them. And so sometimes people wonder why, or at least with me, they wonder why I keep watching these things. It's like, if you've seen one, why are you going to see more of them? Because they're all the same. But usually I hear that from people that either were never fans of this genre, or they were fans when they were younger, but when they got older, it's like, you know, they lost total interest in it. And I always said, I hope that doesn't happen to me, because that happened to my parents, unfortunately, especially my mom. That's where I get my love of horror movies from, is my mom. And she used to love the Friday the 13th and all the different types of slashers that were out there. And as she got older, she likes more like haunted house movies, suspense movies, things of that nature now, instead of the slasher movies. But me, on the other hand, I will be 45 on my birthday, and I still love this stuff. Yes, Darren, there is also a good final girl chase in The Prowler. I think there's even, like, in a way, TJ's in it too, but there's kind of a good final girl chase at the end of My Bloody Valentine, with the Sarah character as well. Like I said, TJ's character the character of TJ is in there as well. Which I gotta say something about. Was it Paul Kelman who played TJ in the movie? I liked his look. I thought he was, not handsome in a really big movie star way, but handsome in, like when you're a schoolgirl, and, well, you guys are not going to know that, but like women, when you're a schoolgirl and you see this really nice looking guy, it was that kind of thing. But then years later, I saw him on the movie Black Roses. I'm not sure how many people that are watching or in the chat have seen Black Roses, but Paul Kelman is in that movie as well. He plays one of the kids' stepfathers, and he's real sleazy. He kind of wants to try to fill up his stepdaughter and all that. It's just kind of gross. And I'm like, where did the Paul Kelman of My Bloody Valentine go? Why are we looking at this sleazy, greasy looking guy? What did I think of the 3D remake? I actually thought it was pretty decent. It wasn't a horrible remake. I did mention earlier that unfortunately I did not get to go to the theater and see it in 3D, so the very little 3D that I saw wasn't real good because it was on the Blu-ray. And as we know, when the 3D first started coming out on the Blu-rays, it wasn't that great. So, Darren, did you get to see the 3D remake at the theater? Again, I realize there's going to be a little bit of a delay with this. By the time that anybody hears my questions, it might be a little bit. So, My Bloody Valentine, it's another one I recommend. There's not a whole heck of a lot as far as special features in this. There is a new 4K scan, not an actual 4K, but a 4K scan of the movie from the original camera negative. There's a theatrical trailer, there's TV spots, radio spots, and a still gallery. And then, actually, there's 2 discs in this. One is the theatrical version, and disc 2 is the uncut version, which is also a 4K scan, original camera negative. Darren said it was good, but the ending was kind of disappointing. Yeah, I still got the glasses. Okay. Yeah, if I remember right, yeah, the ending was a little bit of a letdown. I think they could have done so much more with it, but it was kind of like somebody got tired about halfway through the film. It's like, let's just end it here. But Steve and I were speaking of the uncut version of the original movie. Steve and I were talking about actually, we were talking about it when we did the commentary for it. Why would anybody want to see the theatrical version when you've got the uncut version as well? Because this was a movie that they put on the chopping block. They were pretty heavy handed with taking the stuff out of the movie. I remember there was a Fangoria article showing all the scenes that were cut, and I was like, this would be a completely totally different movie and even more awesome than it already was, because at that time all you could watch was the theatrical version. So I always dreamed of being able to see those actual uncut scenes. And back when I was a newbie Fangoria fan, this is back when Fangoria was good. Seeing those pictures and just sitting there like kind of dreaming about it, it's like I had no idea that we would come so far technology wise with movies that they would just be able to put that stuff back in and make it look as good as the rest of the movie and all that. So I'm really pleased that we've come far enough that people are actually able to enjoy uncut movies in the privacy of their own home without worrying about the theaters having to, do a little cut and paste job, so to speak. So, yeah, I don't know why you'd want to watch the theatrical version now that you got the uncut version, but it's there as well. Again, it's a little light on the special features. I think there are some interviews with some of the people that were in it. Not Paul Kelman, sadly, but Lori Hallier, who played Sarah, Neil Affleck. Yeah, there were a few people that played some actual, well, supposedly kids, but we know they're not. That they interviewed for this. Awesome, Darren. You got that edition of Fangoria. Yeah, I remember reading that as a kid. I'm sure I've still got it somewhere. Unfortunately, all my old Fangoria and Gorezone issues are out in our garage in a tote, because I told Steve I wasn't going to put them outside unless they could be sealed up in a tote. So, they're not readily accessible, but they are around. I think a long time ago I did a video on some of my favorite issues of Fangoria and Gorezone. To be absolutely honest, I'm going to go on a little side trip here about magazines. I actually, in my personal opinion, I thought Gorezone was the better of the two magazines, but it's kind of like VHS and Betamax. A lot of people have said that Betamax was actually a better quality, but VHS went out, so that's what people ended up getting and being able to watch readily. And sort of the same thing happened with Gorezone and Fangoria, because I was looking at Fangoria and then Gorezone came out, and I was like, wow, to me, this is just so much better. It was more of the stuff that I wanted to read and more of the pictures that I wanted to see. And then, all of a sudden Gorezone was gone and Fangoria was all you had. And by the time I got a subscription to Fangoria was starting to change a little bit. Whereas the old versions of Fangoria used to have page after page of movie set pictures and behind the scenes stuff and all that stuff, and there was a lot of cool articles in there. And then right before I cut off my subscription to Fangoria, which was sometime in the 2000s, that I cut it off because it got so bad that like every other page you would turn to would just be a full page glossy ad for something that you could buy. And I'm like, I don't want to be paying $40 a year for this crap. And so I cut my subscription off at that point. because it just, and the movies that they had to cover through no fault of their own, there was just crap out then. There wasn't anything of interest to cover. So, um, like I said, I really can't fault them for that. But moving on, Darren's probably going to be glad we're moving on because we're going to go to the movie that he mentioned earlier, which is Curtains. This is the Synapse film release. This is another one of those that Steve asked me why I got it, because he had, I think, several months or maybe a year before I got my copy, he had bought a copy. And the reason why, and I know it's probably not going to make sense to very few people, the reason why I got my own copy of this is because I liked the movie really well. I wanted my own copy. Dark Side, I think I have seen a couple of issues of that, Darren. Yeah, I think I actually may have bought an issue or two from, I want to say it was Barnes and Noble. Hey, Piper, welcome back, hun. I don't know, how long were you gone? Did you miss all my discussion over prom night and stuff? But yeah, I did notice that it does focus on retro films, and I thought that was pretty cool. When I saw the covers, I was like, "Hey, Steve, this is awesome looking," and so I ended up, like I said, getting an issue or two of those. I'll have to try to find those. I maybe can showcase them on a later stream. But anyway, back to Curtains. Curtains is, to me, is a really, really interesting film. I don't know. It's a little bit different than some of the others, I think. In that I don't really remember it. I don't really remember it focusing so much on some kind of revenge scenario. And now, Darren, correct me if I'm wrong on that. So you're not really so concerned with which of these people is doing the killing, possibly. And I think you're focusing more on the characters and what's happening to them. And I agree with you, Darren. It is underrated, and it's creepy with the doll. The ice skating scene, yes, that is definitely my all-time favorite scene in Curtains, and it has the awesome Leslie Donaldson, who, unfortunately, I had tried to get her for a Blood Type magazine interview, and initially she was really interested, and she's a sweet person. She's my friend on Facebook, and I talk to her occasionally, or she will post something and I'll comment on it. But when I initially contacted her through Facebook for the interview, she said, "Oh yeah, I'll do it, just send me the questions." And then she got really super busy with something going on in her life that I guess she just forgot about the interview. And she told me at the time that she was so busy, and she said if I didn't want to wait to do the interview, she could pull out some stuff from other, I guess, articles she had done, other interviews. But I really wanted to do a fresh interview with her, and so I said I would wait. Unfortunately, I have not heard back from her again. I may try to contact her again. I was also going to try to contact some of the other people that had been in some of the other Canadian slashers, the ones that I could get contact information for, and I may still try to do that at some point. It's just, things have been kind of wild. They've been kind of wild all over since COVID hit, and even before then, and I know I talked about this on my Facebook page for Blood Type Magazine. I went through a period of kind of severe depression where I was just not interested in doing anything. which really didn't help my situation, not doing anything. It pretty much made the depression worse. But I just wasn't interested in doing anything at the time, so I didn't. But I'm really wanting to get back into it. I'm wanting to get back into the podcasting and doing the fanzine. And hey, Wes, how you doing? You come in here too late, buddy. It's almost 9 o'clock. I'm gonna be finished with this soon. Yeah, yeah, it is more about getting the Audra role. All these actresses are, fighting each other practically to get, it's almost to catfight level to get this Audra role. Um, yeah, they did. Yeah, they did film another ending, and I would have loved to have seen that as well. You're tired, Wes? Well, you should go to bed then. You can watch this later. I'm gonna keep. Yeah, I heard y'all doing it. I was like, uh, tonight was my late night at work, and I'm still working from home, and so I was right. I was right here beside Steve, finishing up my work day when you guys were doing that the video earlier. Um, oh, and Darren, yeah, I'm definitely going to, and I had funeral home in the questions to ask her about that. And actually, I think I'll take a minute after I talk about curtains and visiting hours to talk briefly about funeral home, because I don't have a copy of that. And when I was grabbing all the stuff, I was just grabbing my legitimate releases, and so I totally forgot about funeral home. But we'll talk about that before I get off here. But excuse me. Anyway, back to curtains. There's creepy moments with the doll. I really don't understand what the heck the doll had to do with anything, but it was creepy. Um, Darren, do you have any insight into the doll? I mean, why the doll was there? What it was supposed to represent? Am I missing something there? I just know it was creepy. But yeah, it's just basically all these actresses are going up for the role of Audra, like Darren was saying, and they're all meeting at this one house to do these, I guess, the auditions, and so these actresses are slowly getting killed off, and I I wasn't really able to pick out who the killer was from this one. That was another good thing about this movie is I didn't find out who the killer was until the end. Okay, you don't think the doll was explained? Maybe it was just thrown in there just to add an extra layer of creepiness to the movie, which I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I thought the movie as a whole was creepy. Um, and when it gets to the end and the killer's revealed, again, I'm not going to tell you who the killer is. Um, to save people from being disappointed that have not seen this movie. Um, I was as shocked as anybody was when it got to that part. And I guess maybe they didn't give you any cues, or maybe I didn't pick up on the cues. But for me, that was awesome because, like I said earlier, nowadays I don't. Generally, I'm not surprised too often now with the horror films, as far as who the killer is in them. So definitely a good movie to watch. This does have a pretty fair amount of special features. Um, the Ultimate Nightmare, The Making of Curtains. It's a 2014 retrospective featuring interviews with the director, and stars Leslie Donaldson and Lynn Griffin. Oh yeah, actually I'd forgotten that Lynn Griffin is in here as well, which reminds me that I don't have Black Christmas out here, so we might take a minute, second, whatever, and talk about Black Christmas as well. Because even though that one's a 70s one, I did want to consider it with the other Canadian slashers. But Lynn Griffin, like I said, is also in Black Christmas. Now, the special makeup effects guy was Greg Canham. I don't know how many of you guys have heard of Greg Canham, but he did a lot of, or a fair amount of special effects work in the 80s. Darren says, it needs more people to see it. I got the Curtains UK quad. Oh, yes, the hag mask is really creepy, and I don't remember if in the special features they explain where the heck they got that mask, but I would love to have one. I would love to have one for Halloween. And the ice skating scene that you were talking about earlier, Darren, that's my favorite scene and favorite kill in the entire movie. There is a really creepy shot of the killer with that hag mask on, gliding across the ice with the weapon, and I don't know, it's just really, really creepy. I even might, I still dress up for Halloween mainly to entertain the kids in the neighborhood, but I also like dressing up too. If I could get a hold of a mask that looked like that one, I would consider being the killer from Curtains. Not that anybody around here is probably going to know what that is other than Steve. The kids certainly aren't, but that is a really, really super cool mask. Yeah, there's also audio commentary with Leslie Donaldson and Lynn Griffin, which is worth listening to. And there's an alternate audio track with vintage interviews with producer Peter R. Simpson and star Samantha Eggar. Samantha Eggar is also in this as well. Yeah, does anybody want to add anything about Curtains other than it's a freaking great film and I highly recommend it? And pick up the Synapse Blu-ray if you can. Wes, are you still around? You got any comments on Curtains? But again, there's probably a delay. If anybody's got anything to add about that, feel free to just jump right in on the chat. The next one I'm going to bring up, now this is a double feature. I don't believe Bad Dreams is a Canadian movie, so what I'm going to focus on is the other movie, which is Visiting Hours. The one with the skull on there. It looks like the skull in front of the, well, it's in front of a hospital or on the hospital or whatever. I don't know how many people have seen Visiting Hours. I don't think that's a movie that is really that prominent or maybe not mentioned all that much when people were talking about Canadian slashers. But it basically talks about, it centers around a woman played by Lee Grant, who's one of those outspoken TV journalists that really kind of tells it like it is. And so she has this show where she talks about women that are being abused and how these men are really pieces of shit that abuse them. And I mean, she gets really, really, blunt. And William Shatner plays, I'm guessing he's her love interest too, but he might be the producer for a show or whatever, and he's like, you really got to tone it down. He's getting on her and all this stuff, and she's like, I don't care, you know, I didn't say anything wrong, and these guys are pieces of shit, and they deserve to be taken down, pretty much. But meanwhile, while she's doing this show, there's they could refer to him on the Blu-ray as a creepy loner, who's played by Michael Ironside. Now, Michael Ironside is, I can see why he's pretty much played a heavy in most movies. I think there was one movie maybe that I saw him in, and the title's escaping me right now, where he wasn't either a sadistic character or a heavy or whatever. Most times, Michael Ironside is going to be a mean son of a bitch in these movies, and I am not kidding you. And I'm not making fun of how he looks, but he just looks like he might really be a serial killer. I'm sure he's not, but he looks like one. Or he looks like somebody that's just broke out of prison or something and is pissed off at the world. Yeah, Darren says, I love Visiting Hours. I saw the trailer back in 1981 on VHS where all the lights in the hospital reveal a skull. Yeah, I would agree with you. Another underrated gem. And Michael Ironside is seriously one of the badass killers ever. For people that haven't seen him in Visiting Hours, perhaps you've seen him in Scanners. There's the big scene near the beginning of the film where the guy's head explodes, and it's Michael Ironside that causes his head to explode. Yeah, he gives off. He just look. I mean, if this guy was to look at me, I'd think, oh God, this guy's going to kill me. If I didn't know he was an actor or something, I just saw him out on the street and he looked at me, he's just got the most wicked look ever. Yes, Darren, he does look deranged. I'm guessing that's why he got all these roles. But basically, Michael Ironside's character just really flips his lid when he sees the show that Lee Grant's character has put out. And he's determined to kill Lee Grant off and anybody that gets in his way on his way to take her out. You're probably wondering why it might be called Visiting Hours if you haven't seen the movie. What happens actually is he attacks Lee Grant's character, but he doesn't kill her, so she ends up in the hospital. And so he keeps trying to get into the hospital to get to her to try to finish her off. So really suspenseful movie. Not a fun movie. This is a dark movie. And not a lot of room for, comedic stuff. Some movies will be really dark for a while, and then you'll have a comedic element to allow the audience to, relax and stuff. But I don't feel like Visiting Hours does that. Visiting Hours never lets up for the full 90 or so minutes that it's on. It doesn't let loose of you until the very end. And so there aren't a lot of movies that are made like this that are quite that dark. And especially, I don't think a lot of Canadian movies that were like that, in my opinion. Yes, Shatner does phone in his performance, but it does add to the charm. It wasn't one of his greatest roles, and I don't know if it was just me, but Shatner seemed a little bit out of place in this movie. More so than I think Lee Grant. And also, I believe what was I thinking that Donna Mills was in this? Was Donna Mills in this? No, it's Linda Pearl. I'm getting Linda Pearl and Donna Mills mixed up. But Linda Pearl is the blonde nurse in this movie. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else I can say about Visiting Hours other than, as Darren says, it is an underrated gem. And if you haven't seen it, definitely pick it up. You may still be able to get a pretty good price on this one. I had a hard time actually getting this because I didn't buy it when it first came out. I waited a little while, which is why I tell Steve I don't like to wait too long to get movies because I almost didn't get this. And I really wanted it because not only does it have Visiting Hours on it, but it also has Bad Dreams with Jennifer Rubin, which was not. I don't think that's a Canadian movie, but Bad Dreams is one heck of a fun movie, and I may talk about it at some other time, but I'm not going to go too deep into it on this stream. So, yeah, that's all I got for Visiting Hours right now. I might revisit Visiting Hours at a later time, perhaps after I watch it again. Yeah, Darren, Lee Grant was superb in this movie. She was a good fit. I just felt like William Shatner, there was something a little off about having him in it, and I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it. It's just something was not quite right. So, oh, Darren, gosh, you need to see Bad Dreams. I'll have to do some kind of show where I can incorporate Bad Dreams into it. Like I said, I didn't want to put it in this one because we're pretty much focusing on Canadian slashers. But I would like to cover that one at some point. I think you would really enjoy it. If you can get your hands on a copy, definitely watch it. It's got a creepy cult Manson-esque vibe to it, so if you're interested in any Charles Manson type stuff, you might really enjoy this. Okay, so I'm going to cover quickly a couple more films before I get off of here, because Steve said he thought I went on a little bit too long last night, but I was having such a good time that I guess even if nobody was watching, I was just rambling on about stuff. Yeah, it is great. So I'm going to talk briefly about Black Christmas first, and then we'll end this by talking about Funeral Home. Black Christmas, I think everybody pretty much knows about Black Christmas at this point. Yeah, the 88 Films Blue, awesome. Yeah, I don't have that particular version of it. But Black Christmas was one of those movies that I caught just by chance. I hadn't heard anything about it the first time I watched it. It just sounded cool. But here's the thing. The first time I watched Black Christmas, I wasn't impressed by it. But at that point, I didn't know anything about Bob Clark. I didn't know that Bob Clark had did A Christmas Story. I didn't know he had did Porky's. I didn't know about any, I didn't know that he had did, oh gosh, I'm completely forgetting it. I'll think of it later, I'm sure, probably when I'm off of the stream. But Bob Clark really did a lot of cool films, and it's my understanding that Bob Clark was not Canadian, that he moved to Canada and made movies there. Sadly, Bob Clark's no longer with us. He was killed in a car accident. But at the time that I saw Black Christmas, all I knew was that it sounded like a pretty cool slasher, kind of creepy. I thought I would watch it. And like I said, I wasn't impressed the first time I watched it, but maybe I wasn't paying attention good enough or what, or didn't get some of the humor that was in it. The things like with Margot Kidder as one of the sorority sisters being so vulgar, and. But once I saw a few more Bob Clark movies, I kind of understood his humor and how it was incorporated into the films that he was doing, even the horror films. Yeah, Black Christmas is on the top of my slasher list. I don't know, Darren. I don't know if I could rate it above Halloween. Mm, that's tough. That is tough. But I do believe that Black Christmas opened the door for Halloween. It opened the door for John Carpenter to be able to make Halloween. If there was no Black Christmas, there would have never been a Halloween. That's for sure. Um, yeah, and maybe because I saw Halloween before I saw Black Christmas, if it had been the other way around, I might feel a little different. But they're almost tied. They're almost neck and neck for me. Um, but yeah, I definitely Black Christmas opened the door for Halloween and the slew of slashers that came after Halloween. Um, oh, I do too, Darren. I hate the two remakes. That last one they made was. It sounded so bad, I didn't even bother watching it. And the other one that had Andrea Martin in it, why Andrea Martin? Why would you want to be in that? She was in the original Black Christmas as one of the sorority sisters, and she pretty much plays the house mother, or I think she plays the house mother in the remake. And I don't understand. I really don't understand what they were going for there. It was almost like, in my opinion, it was almost like when Rob Zombie remade Halloween. Thought he had to explain every damn thing. And you don't have to explain everything. And I think that's where they messed up with that first remake of Black Christmas. They tried to explain Billy, why Billy was doing what he was doing. You take so much of the creepy factor out of there when you try to explain away everything. And that's where I think they went wrong with that one. The most recent remake, like I said, I heard so many bad things about it that I just didn't even want to bother with it. Um, but yeah, the second time I watched Black Christmas, the original Black Christmas, um, I was actually creeped out by it. I watched it for the second time. I watched it alone in the dark, just like that movie on the dark, alone in the dark with an earshot of my telephone. And I kid you not, if my phone had rang while that movie was on, I probably would have jumped out of my skin. And it's just like the tagline on the poster and everything. If this movie doesn't scare you, if this movie doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight. And that is exactly right, because my skin was crawling. It was crawling all over the place the second time I watched it. Like I said, I don't know if I wasn't really focusing on it the first time I watched it, or wasn't in the right frame of mind, wasn't in the right environment, or what. Um, yeah, unfortunately, Darren, a lot of the movies that have come out in the last year or so, maybe the last couple of years, um, just hate on men, and I don't feel like that's necessary. Now, if you have a really bad guy in a movie that's beating the shit out of a woman or killing women or anything, you want to see that guy go down. But the problem is, a lot of these movies that come out now, they think they have to market themselves as feminist movies. And to me, they're not feminist movies. I don't know what they are. They're some kind of weird offshoot, maybe, of feminism. But it's not the feminism I grew up with, where, women want to be equal and all, equal pay, equal rights, all that business. To me, that's actual feminism. This stuff where you just hate men just because all men, you're convinced that all men are evil. I don't know where in the world that stuff came from, but I'm not of that generation that thinks that way. And so when movies like that come out that just focus on that, on hating men, and they really have no other story to them, I just think that's nonsense. Steve and I talked about since Darren brought this up, I'll mention this. Steve and I recently watched a movie called Lucky, I believe. Awful movie. And if you've heard us talk about it on the Two Against show, you'll know that neither one of us liked it. It didn't make any sense. It was this new feminist type movie, and that's all I can say about it. They shouldn't have marketed it as a horror film because it's obviously not. It's got some other kind of agenda going for it. So stay far away from that movie if you can. But the second time I watched Black Christmas, my skin did crawl. And it was a combination of things. I think it was the atmosphere, and it was those damn phone calls. And I love the way Bob Clark set up the phone calls for when Billy calls. He didn't use the same person. The same person didn't do the voices all the time. I think Nick Mancuso did a lot of those. But Bob Clark also did some. I think they said Bob Clark did a lot of the raunchier stuff where he's saying some really, gross sexual things to the sorority girls. But as it goes on, it gets more and more twisted until it's no longer just obscene phone calls anymore. This guy is actually threatening people. And two, it's the whole thing about the killer being in the house and nobody knows that the killer's in the house, and so he's able to move around without anybody finding out he's there, and he hides up in the attic most of the time. It's just, that whole situation is just creepy and terrifying, and possibility that something like that could happen. That's what makes them scary. I said this last night. The thing about these supernatural killers like Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, that you can't kill, really. They just keep coming back and back and back. They're fun, but it's a lot more terrifying if you really don't know why the guy's doing the killing, and the fact that he's in the house with the people he's killing, and they don't know he's there, and he's making these creepy phone calls. Just the whole combination of all that stuff is what really makes that film work. And if you have not seen Black Christmas, I pity you, and I definitely recommend you go out right now and get that movie and watch it. I don't care if it's not Christmas time. You need to watch it right now. The ending is open-ended. The final scene is very chilling because you kind of, up until that point, you thought maybe Jess's boyfriend was the killer and that he's dead, and it's all over with. But then that final scene where you hear, And, you know, you can hear like giggling, like sort of like childish giggling. If you really got your sound turned up, you will hear it because the camera follows the laughter and the whispering up into the attic. And at that point, you know, oh my gosh, he's still there. And everybody has pretty much left Jess alone under sedation in that house where this guy has killed everybody else. And oh my gosh, is he going to come down there and is he going to finish her off? Is he going to wait a year and, you know, hide up there and kind of do like the bad Ronald thing and like bring himself food up there and hide out in the attic for another like entire year until Christmas time comes around again? You know, you don't know. And it is very open ended. And Bob Clark was a master when it came to being able to create that sort of tension that's so thick you could cut it with a knife, and you're not really sure, you know, is he going to take it further or is it just going to end like this? But I really like the way it ended with him, with the killer saying, Agnes, it's me, Billy. And then, you know, he's still there and the credits roll. And you don't even need anything else. You don't need a scream like at the end of Pet Sematary, the original Pet Sematary, when the screen goes black and you hear a scream before the Ramones song starts. You don't even need that in Black Christmas. Just the way it was set up is good enough. So yeah, definitely get a hold of that one if you can, if you have never seen it. It's one of my traditional Christmas viewings. And sometimes I watch it when it's not Christmas. I just get in the mood to watch a really good film. And in horror circles, this is an excellent film. Okay, so I'm going to talk about one final film before I end this stream. And that is Funeral Home. Now, a lot of people would say that Funeral Home is hokey, really super low budget, not filmed on high quality film stock, all those things. But the thing that makes this movie work, besides the fact that it has the awesome Leslie Donaldson in it, is the atmosphere of this film. And you have a lot of Canadian staples in this, like as far as actors and actresses in the film. Leslie Donaldson's in the film. Kay Hawtrey is in the film playing her grandmother. Harvey Atkins, who was also in Meatballs as Morty. And anybody that remembers Meatballs, his name was Morty, but they would say, hey, Mickey, and that's the whole Mickey Mouse Morty thing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just look up Mickey Mouse and Morty. But anyway, like I said, it has a lot of Canadian actors and actresses that were in other Canadian films, not just horror films, but other Canadian films. And I don't know, I can't say enough about the atmosphere, and it really, I wish someone would put out. Yes, exactly, Darren. Why hasn't Funeral Home had a Blu-ray release? That's just what I was getting ready to say. Why somebody needs to put this film out in a good format and clean it up a little bit and stuff like that. Something else I wanted to bring up as far as actors and actresses in Funeral Home, there is a guy, I guess he's the handyman for Kay Hawtrey's character. He does things around the house. It's a funeral home, but they're kind of turning it into a tourist home. It was previously a funeral home, and now it's a tourist home. Yeah, yeah. The DVD is just a VHS rip, and that is a complete rip off. So many, you know, in my opinion, great films have been. That's the treatment they have given to them. Just, do a VHS rip, put it on DVD. Nobody will know the difference. But we did. But fans do notice those things. So yeah. There. What I was gonna say though, as far as the actors and actresses in the film, the handyman character, and I'm forgetting the guy's real name. Um, but if you have a sharp eye, which I didn't for a long time, and then I realized who this guy was, he is also the guy that plays the reporter in the original Stepfather. The one that did the article on the stepfather, and the brother of the woman that got killed by the stepfather is real upset with the reporter because he didn't print the picture of the stepfather in his article. But that guy is the same guy that plays the handyman on Funeral Home, which is really interesting. Um, but this is basically about the character played by Leslie Dawson, the young girl who comes to stay with her grandmother and help out with the tourist home. And I guess it's more like they call it a tourist home. I mean, maybe that's what they say in Canada, but to me, it was kind of like a bed and breakfast for people to stay in when they're traveling. And oh, Darren, you never knew that guy was the same guy as the reporter on the stepfather. Yeah. Um, yeah, I didn't know that for a long, long time until I went. For some reason I had watched The Stepfather not long after I watched Funeral Home, and I was like, wait a minute, that guy looks very familiar. And then I looked up some information, probably on IMDb, and figured out that was the same guy. But anyway, back to the story of Funeral Home. Um, but there's some weird things going on at this funeral home slash tourist home. People are getting killed off, or so, not all the people. Like there's a family with 2 or 3 kids that nothing ever happens to them, but you find out later they really don't have anything to do with the reason why the person is killing people. Um, so they just basically they stay a while and then I think they leave. But there's a guy that's been staying there for a while and helping Miss Chalmers out, and that's the character played by Kay Hawtrey. Um, and they seem to be friends and stuff like that, and then things start unfolding about Miss Chalmers' husband, who was a mortician, and he not only had a drinking problem, but I think he was abusive to Miss Chalmers, and there were a lot of things that went on. He was having an affair, and I don't want to give too much away because it might, if you've never seen it, it might give so much away that it kind of ruins the great ending. And I remember the ending really creeping my dad out. My dad went for years where things didn't creep him out. And then things like possession movies where people were possessed by the devil or other entities and stuff like that. That stuff started freaking him out. Movies like The Exorcist started freaking him out. This movie freaked him out. Or rather, the ending creeped him out. The Conjuring creeped him out. He finds it hard to watch films of that nature now. But yeah, Funeral Home. What can I say about it without giving it away? I think I've gave the basic storyline and information about some of the characters. There is a really there's a really weird lady on this that comes to the tourist home, and I believe when Steve and I did a commentary for this one, Steve said she looked like a bird or something. She was like super skinny, looked like she had burned herself up in a tanning bed or just laid out in the sun. And she thought she was sexy, but she was just odd looking. And she was, I'm guessing she was the mistress of Harvey Atkins' character. Harvey Atkins plays I believe, a salesman. And so he's going out on his wife, and he's got this mistress. But, oh, Lord. Oh, Unhinged ending. Yes, it's been a while since I've seen Unhinged. I need to pull that one back out and watch it as well. There are actually, maybe I need to do a live stream sometime talking about movies that have really super creepy endings, or maybe just super creepy scenes in them. I know, talking about creepy scenes, the first time I watched, oh gosh, my mind is just going. I had this movie on the tip of my tongue, and now I'm just completely forgetting it. But I'll just say there are certain movies where maybe the dead are coming back, like a paranormal entity is coming back to tell someone to tell someone what really happened to them if they died some gruesome way or somebody wronged them in a certain way. Then, sometimes when they show that person's spirit, they'll, if they slash their wrist or something like that, they'll hold out their wrist and the wrists are slashed, or somebody has shot themselves in the head and they'll turn around and you can see the hole in the back of their head. It's just, I don't know. I find that really disturbing in some ways. Yes, the Unhinged ending was a Psycho style ending. Psycho is one, for an older film, it has a creepy ending as well. I don't know if, like, the very end of Psycho creeped people out like it did me. But when Anthony Perkins looks at the camera and the mother part is completely taken over, that smile he has right before it fades into, I'm guessing, his mother's skull, is just, I don't know. I get cold chills up and down my spine every time I see that. I mean, Anthony Perkins was the perfect person to play the Norman Bates character, in my opinion. Yeah, all I can say about Funeral Home, other than it's a really good film to watch to kind of creep you out, has a lot of dark atmosphere and stuff, is somebody needs to put out a legitimate, cleaned up copy. Maybe try to get an interview with Leslie Dawson to talk about it. I don't know how many of the other people, a lot of I don't know. The last time I checked, I think Kay Hawtrey was still alive, which I figured she had done passed away by now. I think she's pretty old. But I thought Harvey Atkins had already passed away. But, like I said, maybe they might be able to get some special features to put on there. But I just settled for a nice Blu-ray copy that had been cleaned up a little bit. Um, but anyway, guys, I think that's all I had to discuss tonight. Um, I went on about an hour and 41 minutes this time. Not quite as long as last night, but long enough. Um, so, does anybody want to discuss anything else? If anybody else is in here. Oh, yes. Yeah, the remake. The remake's fun for a laugh, Darren, but other than that, I can tell you a story about the remake. This is so crazy. My first DVD player that I bought, at the time I bought it, it was so expensive that I didn't have much money left to buy a movie to actually play in it. And the only one I could afford was the Psycho remake. So that is the first movie I watched in my brand new DVD player when I got one. Yeah. But I can tell you the first VHS I ever rented was Witchboard, Kevin Tenney's great Ouija board movie. But I may, I guess I could open it up to anybody that's still in here that wants to mention anything or has any suggestions for future streams that I might do. Um, oh, I need to share my channel and get your subs up. Yeah. Darren, the thing is, I have my main channel that I used to do all of my stuff on. Unfortunately, this is a new channel that I'm putting this stuff on. And I need to put a little more stuff on it as far as like advertising, stuff like that, before I start sharing it widely. And the other thing is, a lot of this stuff is going to be temporarily on YouTube, on my channel, and then I'm going to move it to my Patreon. So it's probably the majority of these streams that I'm going to be doing are not going to remain on YouTube. They're eventually going to go to the Patreon. So anybody that doesn't see it while it's still up on YouTube or is not in here actually participating in the chat to see me blab on about this stuff is more than likely not going to get to see it unless they join the Patreon, one of the Patreon tiers. So, but I do need to advertise all of it in general more to hopefully get more people to come in, and I would like to have more discussion. Talking to Darren's been awesome, and Wes and stuff, and Piper was in here for a second or two. But I'd really like to get a whole bunch of us in here to have a really good discussion on some of these things. But again, before I get off here, does anybody have any suggestions of streams they'd like me to see, like me to do? Excuse me. Is there any topics that you want me to cover? Any, actors, actresses that you'd want me to talk about? I'm open to anything. Like old times, yeah. Yeah, Darren and I, for anybody that's in here listen, Darren and I used to talk a lot, stay up late, and well, it was probably late for me, but Darren's in the UK, and so that there's a time differential that it could be late where I'm at and early through the day where he's at, and it's just so weird. Um, Favorite Jallos? Yeah, I might have to get Steve in on that one. Um, because I know quite a bit about Jallos, but Steve might, turn me on to some more, different ones that everybody hasn't heard about 10 million times. But I would be glad to cover the regular ones, the Argento ones and stuff like that. Steven showed me some Jallos that you're still a night owl. Yeah. Yeah, I am too. Unfortunately, though, and Darren probably knows this as well, when you have a job and you, you tend to stay up late, it doesn't really mesh well, even if you're working from home. Um, but I was going to say, Steve's been showing me some things that he calls Jallos, like Spanish Jallos and stuff like that I really don't care for those. I don't enjoy those like I do the Italian Jallos, and there's just a difference to them. It doesn't have. I don't feel like the Spanish Jallos that he showed me seem to have the edge that like the Italian ones did. I don't know. Maybe somebody can explain that to me if you've seen Italian Jallos and Spanish Jallos and well, I can't, I don't know what other Jallos there are, but I didn't realize all these other countries were doing these Jallos. Oh, that sounds fun. You gonna get? So, are you getting one shot or two, Darren? Because I only got one. I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which a lot of people tell me is not as effective. But at this point, I'm like, either get the one shot or the two shot. Just get whatever you can get and get vaccinated. It's not. I realize that neither one is going to be 100% right now, but it's better than nothing. So I encourage everybody that wants to get a shot to go on and get signed up for a vaccine if you can. There's my public service announcement for the night. Get your COVID vaccine. Okay. Yeah, Steve's about to get his second one in another week or so. He's going to get his second shot. I think he got the Moderna. But anyway, I guess I'm going to cut this off here. I've already went 2 minutes over what I did last night. I can't be sure if I'll do one of these tomorrow or not. I'll just have to see how I feel. Like I said earlier, I'm getting a new desk in, and I may have to spend several hours putting it together after work, so I might be kind of tired. Might have to skip Wednesday night. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and cut this off now. And everybody have a good night. Thanks for everybody that stopped by and chatted with me. I thought at first I was going to be all alone. But, some people dropped in. Darren dropped by. We had a good discussion. Wes dropped by for a little bit. Piper was in here for a little bit. I hope to be back with something interesting here